The Boston Celtics this season have absolutely no excuse not to win the NBA Finals. And in my opinion, if Jason Tatum cannot win the Finals with this team, he will probably almost never win an MVP. And that could be a hot take, but in my opinion, the dude has had some very good teams over his entire career. And now I'm not saying he should have won a ring by now, because he is still fairly young in the grand scheme of things. He has a lot of years left ahead of him. But in my opinion, he just has had a lot of very talented teams around him. And yes, he's made it to the finals. He's played at a high level, but he's never gotten over that hump and actually won it. And for him to be considered one of those all-time great players that he's kind of on the trajectory of going, he really needs to get at least one ring, at least to be considered in a all-time great conversation if you want to be the best player on a championship winning team. And unfortunately, he has just not gotten over that hump. And in my opinion, there is no reason why he should not win it this season. Because for starters, if we look at the Eastern Conference, it's about as weak as it humanly possibly could get at this point. Now, yes, they have the Milwaukee Bucks, who is probably the one team who has an actual chance in hell of beating them in a series, but the Bucks are legitimately playing their worst basketball of the entire season. And this is ever since they got Doc Rivers, they haven't looked the same, but they are even worse as of right now. Like, they have been miserably bad to end the season. Now, maybe they will turn it around in the playoffs, but with Giannis probably missing the first few games of the series and them just not playing at a high level right now, I couldn't imagine they make a super deep playoff run. And I think ultimately they got worse than they did last year. I mean, Chris Middleton is short-circuiting. Damian Lillard's looking like he's just not comfortable with this team, and it's been that way all year. And then, like I said, they're going to be missing Giannis probably for the beginning of the series as well. And it's just overall not looking great for the Doc and the Bucks. So the number 2 seed, in my opinion, the only team that legitimately has the talent to compete with Boston, is about as dysfunctional as it gets right now. And then if you look at all the other like usual contenders out of the East, or at least recent contenders out of the East, look at the New York Knicks. The Knicks are a great team, but they're going to be without Julius Randle for the entirety of the playoffs this year. And I mean, without Julius Randle, I don't think Jalen Brunson is carrying them past Boston. At least he shouldn't be able to do it. And OG Anunoby is not good enough to be your second best player on a championship contending team, in my opinion. So I think the Knicks are almost kind of eliminated from NBA Finals contention, in my opinion, and the Boston Celtics should most definitely handle them. The Cleveland Cavaliers, who have played very well this year, I mean, we saw what they look like during the playoffs last year. So unless they can overcome those issues and those woes from last year, I mean, let's just hope they can, because the Cavs are a talented team, but even them, their small forward position leaves a lot to be desired. Their bench isn't the greatest, and Boston just really out-talents them. I would say they have the best 2 players on the floor, maybe the first and third best player in the series if you think Donovan Mitchell's better than Jaylen Brown, but overall, I just think Boston is the better built team than Cleveland, and although it could be an interesting series, I think Boston should definitely win that series as well. And then their kryptonite, the Miami Heat, I mean, they shouldn't have the talent to beat this Boston Celtics team. I know they beat them last year, but this was not the same team. They didn't have Drew. They didn't have Kristaps. Derek White wasn't playing at this level, and their bench was weaker. So Boston, although they had more talent last year, they should have so much more talent than the Miami Heat that they should be able to beat them in a 7-game series. Will they? Who knows? Because the Miami Heat become the best team of all time when they're in the Eastern Conference Finals and the playoffs in general. So, I mean, no telling how good they're gonna be. But you should be able to beat that team. Like, if the Miami Heat are your biggest struggle, you should make the finals. And then, I mean, even though the other teams in the East, no one else really scares you at all. Like, maybe Orlando, but I don't think Orlando should be touching Boston in a 7-game series. Like, there's just nobody in the East that I think you can even make an argument that they should beat Boston. Like, you could make an argument that they could beat Boston, but I don't think there's any team in the East even close to say that team should beat them. Like, they would be favorited over them. Like, there's no world in any world, in my opinion, in a 7-game series, fully healthy, where this Boston Celtics team should be losing to any of these teams. And I just think overall, to at least make the finals, there is absolutely zero excuse for them to not at least make the NBA Finals, assuming they stay healthy. And then, if you look at the Western Conference, if the Eastern Conference is as weak as it gets, the Western Conference is unbelievably strong. They're the Arnold Schwarzenegger of the entire fucking league. I mean, the Western Conference is going to be an absolute bloodbath when it comes to playoffs. Like, the Nuggets are the favorites, in my opinion, for sure, but they're not guaranteed. There's tons of good teams in the West. I think, half of them were tied in win percentage or within one game of each other. Like, it is absolutely insane how talented the West is this year, and that's going to be an absolute bloodbath, and the Boston Celtics are only going to have to beat one of those teams in the Western Conference, and there's a real chance they could be playing the youngest team in the NBA in the Oklahoma City Thunder, who they should definitely be favorited over. They could be playing Minnesota, who I think they're way more talented than. They could be playing Denver, who would be a very big challenge, and I think that's the one team in the NBA who you can even argue should be favorited, and I still don't think they should be favorited talent-wise, but they could legitimately beat the Boston Celtics, and that is the one team that could do it. But that's not even a guarantee that they make the finals because of how strong the Western Conference is, 1 through 8, no matter who makes the playoffs and the play-in game and all that. Like, it's going to be very, very interesting to see who comes out of the West. And if it's anybody but the Denver Nuggets, the Boston Celtics are 100% going to be the favorite in that series. And even if it is Denver, I would still argue with how talented that team is, Jason Tatum should be able to get it done. Because, if you look at every other roster in the NBA, there's a lot of very well-built rosters. Like, the Denver Nuggets are an excellently built roster. The Oklahoma City Thunder are an excellently built roster, but there's very few teams that have anywhere near the talent and the well-builtness of the Boston Celtics. The Boston Celtics legitimately have an MVP-level player on their starting lineup in Jason Tatum. They have a top 5 shooting guard in the entire NBA in Jaylen Brown. They have an all-star level center in Kristaps Porzingis. They have one of the best NBA defenders in the entire league and a former All-Star twice in Drew Holiday. And then as their 5th guy in their rotation, they have a 15-point per game scorer shooting 40% from the 3-point line as their 5th guy in Derek White. And Derek White was in All-Star conversations this season. So all 5 of their guys in their starting lineup are unbelievably talented players and are legitimately borderline All-Star level players at minimum. And there's no other team in the NBA where their 5th guy was getting recommended for All-Star votes. Like, he legitimately got a lot of All-Star consideration. Now, I didn't agree with it, but he still got a lot of consideration. And like I said, there's no other team in the NBA where their 5th option on that starting lineup was getting any All-Star consideration whatsoever. And then, even I think a very underrated part of this roster is the fact that their bench is very strong. Al Horford makes a huge difference off the bench. He can spread the floor, he can rebound the ball. He's still an extremely, extremely solid big to have, and he's not going to flake on you in big moments because he's played them, he's a vet, and he's just overall a great piece to have off your bench, and he's going to be huge for them the entire playoffs. Sam Hauser's been playing very good all year. Peyton Pritchard just had a game where he dropped damn near 40. Now, yes, he was starting, and he was never going to get that opportunity in the playoffs, but the fact that you have someone with the potential to drop 40 off of your bench is extremely, extremely encouraging, and Peyton Pritchard is a very just dog-like player, very solid. And then even Xavier Tillman off the very end of their bench is another very, very solid player who's played in the playoffs before with the Memphis Grizzlies. And all this talent and all how well built this roster is, it's just proven. They have by far the best record in the NBA, and they are literally top 2 in both offensive and defensive rating. For context, most teams that are top 5 in defensive and offensive rating are the NBA Finals contenders. There's only 1 or 2 of those per year. This year, they are top 2 in both, and they are the only team that are top 2 in both, obviously. And, with you being that good on both sides of the ball in the regular season, having by far the most regular season success, having this much talent, the Eastern Conference being a borderline cakewalk to the finals no matter who you play, in the Western Conference, you only have to beat one of them, and there's no guarantee you're even going to be playing the Nuggets because of how strong it is. The Boston Celtics, in my opinion, have zero excuse not to win the finals this year. And I think it will be a huge indictment on Jason Tatum if he doesn't win it, because you're the best player on that team. You should be able to carry this team to that. And there's just so much talent on this team. I can't see a world where it would make sense that Boston doesn't end this year without the trophy in their hands unless they have injuries, God forbid. But unfortunately, guys, that's going to be my first video. So comment below, do you agree with me? Do you think Boston should win the finals? Do you think anybody else could legitimately beat them? I want your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you point the like button and subscribe button to me, that's road me. And I hope you have a blessed day, because I had a blessed day, so you need a blessed day. I'll go over to guys. See you next video. Goodbye. Boo.